Joining us now is Janice Ellig. She's the chair of the Corporate Board Initiative at the Women's Forum of New York. Janice, it's wonderful to have you here.
Great to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us. Your organization recently commissioned a survey on gender equality in corporate America. Why don't you talk to us about the survey? What were the key findings and takeaways there?
Well, I'm really excited about this survey because just like the Fearless Girl, it's raising awareness about gender equality in corporate boards and in the C-suite. And I would highlight there are three major things that came out that I think are exciting, and it will really raise awareness in the boardroom and the C-suite. One is that women see that gender equality has not been reached. Men see it as having been achieved.
Sure.
Women see that gender equality is a real problem. Men don't see it as a problem. Women see that there's a great supply of women who are able to go onto boards and into the C-suite. Men don't see that there's a supply. There's no women out there to put into the C-suite and into the boardroom. And so I think one of the issues is that you'll never solve a problem until you recognize that there is a problem. So we have to recognize that women see a problem, men don't. And if you look at the boardrooms today, 80% of those board seats are filled by men. Therein lies a problem. There's not equality. So what do we need to do? We need to fill every other opening with a woman. And if we do that, we can get to parity by 2025, within a decade. Well, I think women do see that it will happen because they are going to have the pedal to the metal. They're really going to make it happen, and they're going to help women get there. And I think men are intentional about it, but they have not been focused on it. And part of the reason is if you think that gender equality has been achieved because you look around the boardroom and you say, I see a woman there. It's been done. So one and done, two and through, three and free. And they feel that, well, it's been done. Where it really should be 4 and more, or 5. Imagine that. We have half the board are women. And that's when we'll get to parity. And that's what it should be. But when you look at the Fortune 1000 and the S&P 500, there are only 35 companies out of 1,000 that are at 40% or more. Now, isn't that unconscionable with the great women that are out there to fill these positions? Unless you have the Fearless Girl and State Street Global Advisors and CEOs in the C-suite saying, we need to get to 40%. We need to get to parity. We need to get at least to 40% and then have half the board seats. It will not happen unless you have the game changers, the CEOs and the board chairs saying, the women are out there, the supply is there. We can get to parity within the decade, within the next 10 years. It doesn't happen overnight, but if you say we're going to be intentional about it, the problem has been a lot of boards have said, I need a sitting CEO or a former CEO, and then you narrow the pools of candidates. You don't need to have a CEO. You need to have people of cybersecurity who have run big divisions of companies, and who look for candidates who are qualified to be on boards. So one of the big barriers is that they're not in the network. So PwC did a survey, and they found that of the 1,000 board directors that they interviewed, 90% of those board directors said, we get these candidates from our own network. So Charlie looks at Harry and says, who do you know? Right. As opposed to looking at Sally and saying, who do you know? So around the board table, they're going to their own network, even when they use a search firm. So what you need to do is expand the network. So what the Women's Forum of New York has done is to say to the CEOs that and I'm going to tell you about a Breakfast of Corporate Champions, which is coming up this November 14, what we do is we convene CEOs to say, we're going to honor you for having 25% or more women on your board. And this November 14th, we will honor 315 companies out of the Fortune 1000 that have reached that threshold of 25%. And when we convene them, they all talk about, and Ron O'Hanley from State Street Global Advisors will be there to speak about what he's doing. We'll honor them, and then what we will do is also ask them to sponsor women who they know who could be on a board, who are board qualified, and then we put them into our database. And when in doing that, then they become part of the network.